Marathon class. I think. I think that's what we have today. There are a lot of classes beginning with M. And yeah, it's the Marathon class. When launched in 1888, they were second-class protected cruisers. By the time of Queen Victoria's 1897 Diamond Jubilee Naval Review, they were grouped with the third-class protected cruisers. Oh my, how the mighty have fallen. But there is a reality going on here. What is an armoured cruiser one day might seem far less potent and armed than a first-class protected cruiser another day, as times change, as the ships evolve. So that means that ships don't stay stationary, that the concepts of what makes a ship in terms of its capabilities makes it fit within a certain category change and evolve. Really? That's amazing to think about. Especially in the light of certain treaties which artificially bridge this. And then, of course, ships come in, like, I don't know, the Alaska class in the late 1930s, early 1940s, and people go, oh, they must be this or that, when actually they are just the next generation of cruiser. They're not a battle cruiser. They are just where a realistic heavy cruiser would be in a world with 40, 50, 60,000 ton capital ships. It's the strange sort of thing that the capital ships are going up in tonnage. And I know they're again limited by treaty, theoretically, but then there are the vessels which actually enter service. Yamato, Musashi, the Iowas, Bismarck, Tirpitz, and, well, of course, the Torios. And the reality is they're getting bigger, the heavy cruisers are getting bigger. And when you go back in time, of course, as I've said before, you start looking at where does the sort of levels for a heavy cruiser and a new cruiser come from? Oh, they come from the large light cruiser, which the Royal Navy was designing, which was an evolution of the Town, the Seas, and the D's becoming the Hawkins class. Oh. So realistically, you'd lost the middle band of vessels which used to sit between capital ships and most cruisers at the sort of the upper end of the cruiser spectrum. And honestly, that's where the Deutschland class sort of were aimed at, and with their 11-inch guns. And that's where the Alaska class were aimed at, and that's where various super cruisers the Japanese were working on and the British were working on could well have been aimed at. I've often said myself, I suspect if the British had built it, they'd have... Well, they didn't have a 12-inch gun under production, so it would probably been a 6-14-inch gun, with 3 of the twin turrets taken off the King George V's and adapted down to a cruiser. Because that's their only real option. I could use 15-inch turrets, but then they are officially admitting it's a battleship or something else. Or alternatively, they actually build battle cruisers. Depends on what the treaty scenario you're in. But the world is a complicated place. And the fact is, all this had played out a long time before. This is HMS Magazine. This class, the Marathon class, are special. They are special to me because they do absolutely nothing. Go and look them up. Search for them. They get minuscule amounts written about them. If you go to the Dreadnought project, which I've talked about before many times, is one of my favourite sites to go to for this sort of thing. You look at Marathon. She had Captain John G. Jones on the 18th of July 1889 for the 1889 annual manoeuvres. Captain George W. Hill for, well, September 1890 to February 1894, so presumably did some manoeuvres and some exercises. Captain Robert B. Machinoni 1894 to 1896. He was invalided out due to climate-related debility. Acting Commander Henry H. Bruce took over from 1896 to 1897, and Captain John G. M. Field in 1898. Magazine, the vessel pictured here. Well, she had John P. Pippen from July 1889 to September 1889 for the annual manoeuvres of 1889. Then Pippen came again in 1890 to, well, April 1890 to August 1893. Then Arthur C. Clarke turns up again. I do love Arthur C. Clarke, and, well, he does have the correct spelling of his name. And if I told you that the traditional names for men in my family are Arthur, Alexander, Douglas, and Donald, and I have 3 of those names in my name, there is a strong suspicion in my mind that Arthur Calvert Clarke, with that spelling of Clarke, might well be a relative somewhere. I'm not sure. I haven't done a massive amount of looking, but it's the right spelling of Clarke, and it's Arthur. And it would... There are a few cousins, etc., wandering around at that point, so it could well be a relative. He's in charge till 1897, March 1897, from August 1893. Captain Frederico Pike, June 1897 to September 1897 for the annual manoeuvres of 1897. Captain Philip F. Tillard, November 1897 to May 1899. And Captain William B. Fisher, April 1899 to June 1901. Now, what's interesting to note is that we don't have any notes about Clarke's career, really, until 1898, when he seems to land with a naval force and cooperated with the military, taking over Shamshur. Duty well and exceptionally performed is the report from him about him. He retires a vice admiral. And as I've said before, he then suffers the absolute insult that when he offers his services in 1915, there's no position for him, and he was told he was free to offer himself to the War Office. It's terrible. So rude. All these ships have a range of officers put in charge of them. If we consider Medea, she collided with TB-64, which was, of course, a torpedo boat, in when she was leaving the base at Chan Dockyard on 11th July. Torpedo boat's bow was smashed and she proceeded to Sheerness for repairs. The cruiser was holed. Recommissioned in 1911. In mid-1913, assigned to the Mediterranean, which is appropriate. So these classes, well, the Marathons are often considered, sometimes called the Medea class for starters, and they are an evolution of the Mersey class. When I say an evolution of the Mersey class, you'll notice immediately, the Merseys are heavier. The Merseys are a lot heavier. They really are. So what's happened here? What happened to the Merseys? How did they get like this? Why did they get like this? Well, it's quite simple, really. The Mersey class are big, but they're second-class protected cruiser big. The British were trying to produce something which was probably a response to the Forbin class, to the other vessels being built, but also for a presence vessel on foreign stations, hence the trying of the Deur boilers on the Medusa. They had a speed of between 19 and a quarter knots and 20 knots, depending on who you're asking in terms of sources. And the engines do seem to be whatever they could find, and the boilers seem to be what was available, other than the boilers, which caused a bit of a stir. I'll get into that later. Deck armour between 1 and 2 inches. In that sort of nice deck. 6 6-inch guns, broadly speaking 6-inch guns. 9 6-pounder quick-firing guns, 1 3-pounder gun, 3 machine guns, and 2 torpedo tubes. Probably the torpedo tubes are 14-inch ones again, but again, it's one of those things where it's always listed as 2 torpedo tubes, and again you find that the class evolves, so it's probably sensible to just think of them having 2 torpedo tubes. But they are, interesting enough, really built in 2 batches. They're kind of like the modern rivers, in that you have 2 which are built for home service, and 3 which are sheathed in wood and copper to make them easier to maintain on tropical service. Wonder where they're going to spend their lives. It's fun, isn't it? But they're good ships. They're interesting ships. On the subject of the boilers, well, Mr. William Allen of Gateshead, I beg to ask the Secretary to the Admiralty whether he can state how many water tube boilers have been ordered from Germany, what is the total cost of the same, whether the cost includes fitting on board, what vessels are they to be fitted in, and if any guarantee is given to the Admiralty by the patentees for results in continuous steaming. Also, what is the nature of the defects developed in the Belleville boilers during the last trials of His Majesty's ship Formidable? Secretary to the Admiralty, Mr. Arnold Forster. Belfast. W. 8 water tube boilers of the Der type have been ordered from Germany. The total cost of the boilers is £19,450. 8 boilers for less than 20 grand. Imagine if you could get that today. You probably couldn't even get the boilers for 8 boilers for a house for less than 20 grand these days. Well, depends on what quality boiler you're buying. Especially, it's certainly not boilers at this level. This is exclusive to spare parts and fitting on board. Ouch. The boilers are to be placed on board HMS Medusa. They have been guaranteed by the maker to give £155,000 dry steam per hour from feed water at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, with an air pressure of 1.5 inches. £104,000 per hour with half an inch air pressure, that used for continuous steaming, and £80,000 per hour with natural draft. The only defects observed in the boilers of HMS Formidable on recent trials were 1 nickel sleeve in number 10 boiler at the junction of the feed collector with the element split, and a few others leaking slightly. The trial and the preliminary trial showed that the greater provision for the moving of the steam pipes under expansion was required, and steps are now being taken to remedy the defect arising from this cause. Mr. William Allen, why is not the Formidable at sea if the defects are so slight? Mr. Arnold Foster, possibly at this point thinking, oh, you muppet. Owing to the expansion of the steam pipes, it has been found necessary to make a readjustment, which, as the Honourable Member knows, is a serious piece of work. I wonder if that had a double entendre. It's a serious piece of work, you're a serious piece of work. Sorry, double meaning. I don't know. I'm still working out some of the sounds for this. I have to admit, I do apologise in some of these videos because I think some of them, it gets a lot louder than in others, especially at the beginning. Because I'm still working out the gain level for this microphone to make it work properly in the new scenario, because, and I apologise for going off topic here, the computer in this room has changed the acoustics. It has. It used to be, if I positioned this mic where it is, and the same level it is now, it barely picked up anything. Now, with the backing it has and the computer and the way the room's been remodeled, all the sound seems to go there. It's brilliant, but it is an issue. The Magazine. They are a good little class. And they get up to quite a lot of interesting projects. You know, Medusa, well, she's one of the vessels which are towed in 1906 by 3 other cruisers, along with Thermal and Ronaldo, from the Firth of Forth to Mersebank, where they were to be moored, and basically to be used there. Some of the ships were used assigned to Mediterranean in World War, 1913. Some of them were used as reserve ships. They had all sorts of interesting roles that they actually managed to get up to, which is always a cool thing to do. One of the things that's worthwhile noting is they never achieved their design speed, 20 knots. They never achieved it. You had Marathon and Magazine, both built by Fairfield at Govan. Medea, built by Chatham Naval Dockyard. And Melopine, built at Portsmouth. And Medusa is also built at Chatham. Not a single one ever reaches their speed of 20 knots. Not a single one. It's fun, but they never reach it. They're a good class. And they do what they're supposed to do, which again is not go and fight big battles against other cruisers. One of the things that's often difficult to point out with ships is that there are ships which you produce which are built to go off and be your big status ships. They're built to, and they can be cruisers, they can be capital ships, they can be all sorts of things. They're built to go off and be your status units. And there are ships you build to sort of go off and be your pickets and your real fighting tip of the spear edge in war. And it's very sexy, and that's very cool, and everyone immediately goes, ooh, those are good ships. But, let me put it this way. Do I have a blade in here? Nope, but I have a key. I have a key. So let's look at this key. Okay? This is the tip of the key. That's great. That's important. That's a key bit. And the edge of the key. Those are key bits. That's your sort of pickets and your really hard capital units. That's your formation, right? What's this stuff? That's the rest of your ships. They're not the cool part. They're not the part you pass your finger along and go, yep, that's strong. Don't put the weight on that. Or feel an end and go, yep, that's going to do what a key's supposed to do. But without them, that key is not a solid unit. That is what vessels like the Mersey class, the Marathon class are for in wartime. They're the vessels which fill in the gaps which are left by the bigger units being deployed to fight the war. They're the units which come in and form the other ships in the task group, the bits which are the ships which are often forgotten. Let's be honest, when we talk about World War II and we talk about some of the battles, we might talk about some of the counties and towns and maybe some of the, even go down as far as the Leanders and the Crown colonies. Occasionally we'll mention the Arafusas. But how often do the C's and D's which turn up, the cruisers are still cruisers. Very useful AA cruisers get thought about. But we talk about the Didos, which are also AA cruisers. Didos have the big sexy 5.25 inch gun. Ooh, we're going to talk about that. This other one has twin 4-inch guns. There's a lot of them in service at various points. They're critical, they provide the numbers, but they don't get talked about. It's the same with second class cruisers. You need them. It's one of those easy things to do in history and in current affairs is to write off the things that aren't the flashy. If you think about another perspective. The safety car on a Formula 1 track. Formula 1 cars are all the sexy ones. They're all really cool. But a safety car has a massively important role. but it doesn't have to be as fast or as cool looking or as difficult to drive or as handled the same way as the Formula One cars. It has to do its job. But you can really, de facto, pick pretty much anything to it. You tend to pick quite a nice car because Formula One has a money and image issue, but it doesn't have to be the really greatest car available to do its job. It just doesn't. Summary. Well, I like them. I think the fact that Melpin and Magicine and Marathon were all sheathed in wood and copper for tropical service made them even slower than their counterparts is something that's fun. I think the fact that the others, Medea and who else? Who's the other one? Medusa. Spend most of their lives being reserve ships and supporting out the reserves is pretty nice as well. In fact, that's what they're listed as doing in a Diamond Jubilee. They're listed as reserve ships, part of the R&R. And that's a very useful function for the ship. You want to keep your R&R crews as trained up as possible. Why? Because in wartime you want to activate them. That's something else which is often forgotten when we look at things in modern phraseology. If a ship isn't in service, charging about the sea, people will often believe it's not being valued for money. Yet, if you turned round to someone in the 1890s or 1900s, and you said, "Oh, all the first-rate warships aren't at sea. It's a terrible waste of money," they'd look at you as if you're insane. Why are you using up ship life? Why are you using up the lives of your best ships doing patrolling duties when you can have ships like this wandering around and doing the work? Why are you using up ships like that doing training for reserves and providing fishery protection and basically presence in the UK waters when you have another nation's warship show up, when you can use a ship like this? It'll work. If anyone actually does sink it or does fire on it, yes, you're going to have lost those crew, but God help them. Because in those scenarios, there's going to be no shortage of big, powerful things you can deploy and go after it and go, right then, how would you like to die? In a deluge of shells or by boarding? Because we have enough vessels to make the water around you literally turn into dry land. So they were useful. And 6-inch guns, 9 6-pounders. They are useful. They're going to be able to do fishery protection. They're going to be doing commerce protection and commerce interdiction. They can do all those roles. They're useful. However, they are definitely not the most famous Marathon-class cruisers around. They really aren't. Seriously. You start doing any research into the Marathon class and this is what will show up regularly. And when I say show up regularly, I mean show up regularly. The Marathon class heavy cruisers from Halo. And I love them. They are cute. Now, they are slightly differently armed because they're 1,192 meters long. Just a small difference between them and the Marathon class, second class protected cruiser, which, as said, smaller than the Mersey. Very titchy. And they are far, far smaller. I'm not going to say quite how much smaller because that sounds cruel. The mass tells you all you need to know. The Marathon class cruisers, 12 million tons. The displacement of the Marathon class second class protected cruiser, 2,950 tons. Not quite sure how much that outmasses it out by, but if we're going to be nice and round up to roughly 3,000 tons, so let's see, 4 times it equals 12. It's 12 million tons. 4,000 times 3,000 would equal 12 million tons. So roughly 1/4,000th of the displacement. Slightly actually less than a 4,000th displacement. It's 2,950 tons after all. Yeah. Rather than 3,000 tons. It's just not nice. It's not a good conversion for the portable cruiser. But no, these are the backbone, really, of the UNSC. Yeah. And they're good ships. They're reliable ships. They are done wrong by the Autumn class, though. I think they should have built more of them. But no, they make the backbone of the fleet. And sometimes, when they are there, that is enough. And that is the point of a heavy cruiser. You don't need to send anything bigger, because more often than not, it's going to be enough to make the point. There are incidents in some of the books, and I think even one of the games, but I can't remember which one, where basically the presence of one of these cruisers is enough to make a faction of humans go, you know what, we were considering doing something very naughty and bad, but we have better things to do today. And that is exactly what you want from a heavy cruiser. But it's not one you're going to get from a second-class protector cruiser. They are at completely different ends of the scale. The second-class protector cruiser, that is about presence. And that's about a pack of them, probably around something like that. Going, that's the main show. That's the powerful thing you're all scared of. But the thing is, it's not here without support. It's got all of its friends around it. Which makes getting to it very much more difficult. And means, whilst we are theoretically individually easier to deal with, if you're dealing with us, you're not dealing with him, with her. And if you're dealing with her, you're not dealing with us. And we've still got 6-inch guns and we can hurt you because we have torpedoes as well. And that's the point. That's the point of a task group. And focus all your efforts on the key asset in that task group. But that leaves all the other assets unencumbered by your attention. And that's dangerous. And they're cute. They're cuter, but they're still cute. Come on, it's only 12 million tons. It's literally a baby. What have we got coming up? We had the Battle of Coronel the other day. We got the Capitani Romani class next week. That's going to be fun. I hope you're going to enjoy the rest of these, because there are more of them coming. Take care, have fun, and thank you for all your support. It wouldn't be possible without it. This really wouldn't be possible without it, especially with all the weird stuff that's going on, but thank you very much. And quick dash ahead to Christmas. The Ottoman and Venetian War, 1499 to 1503. Threw it in because I thought, frankly, I'm doing everything on very modern stuff, and World War II, I've got to have something to balance it out. So yeah, I went way back. Way back. I got to my time machine and went, how far back do I feel like going? The Ottoman-Venetian War. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you very much, and hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.